Welcome back to another episode of Media Talks TV with Tony J. I wanted to jump right into a pressing issue that I wanted to discuss. As you know, the job market right now is very, very scarce. Think I know a lot of people out there looking for jobs, finding themselves hitting a roadblock, and I've been looking in the news today and I've been reading the news that a lot of people, especially in Gen Z, they decided to take up trades and mostly construction trades, which is not a bad idea. But there's a major caveat to going into trades. Now, this video is not to, crap on all trade jobs because I know trades are very important and it's actually even a good alternative to college sometimes. But what what's happening right now in the disconnect is, you know, our parents and mostly teachers as well have been pushing trades as an alternative to going to college. Some may go into trades, some may not go to college, and that's understandable. So the trades is a very viable option. But this I've heard this conversation before about trades, just like I've heard the conversation about STEM degrees. And I remember 15 years ago that if you didn't get a STEM degree, that your chances of getting a job would be very slim. If you didn't get a job, if you didn't get a major that was a STEM field, nobody would hire you. And I heard that all throughout maybe 2012 all the way up to 2018. And during that time, science and engineering used to be the fields that were the guaranteed for jobs, especially coding. And coding and computer programming were anything in the IT or the tech field, you were always going to have a stable middle class job. They said that 15 years ago. Then, when the job market was so bad during the Great Recession, then they told students that they should get an internship before just to get some type of experience, that they had to have that 1 year of experience on their resume, and that in their resume they said, well, companies were looking for college graduates with at least 1 year work experience. If they could get 1 year work experience, even if it's an internship, it was valid for them to be at that company. A lot of people got internships, maybe two or three internships. I knew a lot of college students that I went to school with got an internship, but it didn't lead to long term employment. So now they're saying, okay, well, then the whole STEM thing comes back up again. You need a degree in STEM. You need a degree in engineering. But then even before that, they were talking about they didn't start emphasizing trades. They emphasized college, and then college became the viable option. And then these parents, these guidance counselors, all shoving their kids into a 4 year college, a single minded track, a single track. And as we were going into college, corporate America was playing this game of moving the goalposts as the years went on. So then after 2017, everybody had to have at least 5 years worth of experience. Then after 2020, everybody was begging for people to come back to office now. Now that everybody's back at the office, they don't want to fucking hire anybody. And so it's like this game that's being played in the job search that politicians and the media does not want to really talk about. I had an up close, upfront encounter applying for jobs online. And the most hectic thing is when you apply for jobs online that most of them are either door to door companies or telemarketing companies. And this is one of the hardest things. It's like a self defeating thing trying to look for a job now. And nobody, not even the media, really wants to honestly have a discussion. But the point that I'm trying to make is everybody in the media has seemed to be pushing this shit with the trades. Go get a trade. Go get a trade and get a construction trade. But the worst type of trades, and to be honest, most trades don't even guarantee you a job either. But they're not going to say that. They're not going to say that. They're going to say, just put your years in, do your 4 year journeyman, and then work on an apprentice, and then once you get your experience, go into contracting and build a clientele. They got all these grandiose dreams about going into trades. Oh, you need to do HVAC. Oh, you need to do carpentry. There's going to be a lot of demand for carpenters, like as if somebody is going to be building a fucking house or pitching a fucking deck like Bob Vila. It's not going to happen. But you have a media machine right now, and the big media machine, these big corporate media giants, all having these stories about Gen Z and millennials taking up trades, and there's a demand for trades, but they don't talk about the ugly side of having a construction trade. So many of people that go into construction trades don't know that as time goes on, if you're in your 20s, your body might be able to handle it. You might be able to get up and put on some work boots and drive to your job and work on a construction site. But the problem with that is over time, because the older forces kind of aging out, the younger ones are coming in. They don't realize what it's going to do to their body. They don't realize what damage they're going to be doing to their backs and their knees what type of chemicals they're going to be breathing in at the job site. They don't think about OSHA law, how most construction companies cut corners with OSHA law and jeopardize their construction workers. And then most of the time we'll try to undercut them and underpay them by using either day laborers or immigrants to finish off the rest of the work so they can afford so they don't have to afford to pay union workers. And this is where the bullshit lies when you have high school teachers telling students they ought to go into construction work, that they ought to do masonry or welding or one of my favorites, HVAC. But then you want to look out for the three D's. Well, actually, the four D's. And the four D's are dirty, dangerous, denigrating, and demeaning. Dirty, dangerous, denigrating, and demeaning. And that's what the trades do to people. They talk about trades, plumbers, and stuff like that. Like, yeah, plumbers are good, but let's be honest. Do you really want to? Do you, I mean, do you really want to spend the rest of your days trying to fix somebody's shit bowl? Yeah, they get paid as much as lawyers do, but most people don't go into plumbing for various reasons. If that was the case, we'd have more plumbers than lawyers, right? And the thing about a lot of these trades is tradesmen don't get paid as much as somebody who has a professional degree. And one of the problems with trades, because I tried and I attempted to do a trade, but I couldn't stand the lack of professionalism at trade schools. And this is the thing, this is the dirty secret that they don't tell you about trade school. Most of the time, the instructors that you get are not qualified to teach in a classroom. Most of you will get practicals, but you have to figure it out on your own. And that's one of the things that they don't when you're so used to learning from a textbook and learning how to regurgitate things and do things by memory, and then you try to translate that over to the trades where in trade school you learn by doing, but there's also has to be a sense of professionalism too. And most of the time, trade school does not give you that aspect of the job. It's good to have the work skills, it's good to have all those things, but it's also important to be what is considered a professional. And a lot of these trade schools today, because they're not well financed, they don't have accredited instructors that can teach you the skills that you need to learn in order to do well in the field. They don't they don't give you that. And that's one of the biggest caveats about going into the trades. Like you just pop out of school, high school, and then go straight into either Lincoln Tech or All State Careers or North American Trades. And either way, you go into these fields and you feel lost. And going from, with me being in a position that I'm in, going from college and then going into a trade, it felt kind of different to me because I was so used to having a textbook, some videos, things that show me how to demonstrate step by step so that I could know what I'm doing. But when you go on a trade school, they're like, well, oh, you don't need that textbook. You don't need these videos. We're going to do it by hand. And then when you practice and practice and practice, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Then you don't really truly learn any methods. And see, this is where the disconnect between academia and going to trade school is. Those that work in academia, they give us methodologies in order to memorize certain things. There is theory and then there's your practical. So your practical is where you just apply things, but you have to have theory too. And you have to be able to refer back to your methods in order for you to get better at that field. You only get better when you know the methods. So that way, when you come into the field and you start working in that field, then you know which methods to use because you've gone over it and over it again in class. So you'll be able to practice it. In the trade space, there is no, you know, there's no space for you to have methods in order to do everything. Everything is kind of like trial and error. And not that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is problematic because in order for you to become a professional, it's important that you have competent instructors that can teach you certain methods about that field of study. You know, you don't just go right into the practical and then you sit there and you don't know what the hell you're doing. And that's one of the biggest caveats is always this disconnect where as though in college you learn more theory but not worldwide application, whereas though you learn in trade school you learn more hands-on, but you don't get the theory side most of the time. You just learn through trial and error, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but then there's a thin line between professionalism. And what happens is trade schools do not teach professionalism. They don't teach you how to craft your resume. They don't teach you how to go out and look for jobs. You have the skill, but you don't have the professionalism to go along with it. And then this is the big problem with trade schools that most students don't know about, and that is tuition costs. Going to trade school could be significantly higher than going to college. Whether you believe it or not, it's more expensive to go to trade school than it is to go to college because they charge you for everything. Like, if you're going to be there for 3 years, I remember trying to go to North American Trade, and I remember them telling me for the HVAC program that I would have to pay $27,000 a year just to go to the HVAC program for 3 years and then pass the state exams. That was a price tag I wasn't willing to take. In fact, I believe that all trade schools should be free. It should come with a guarantee that you do 1 year's worth of work and then to pay back the initial cost through apprenticeship. And I know people look at it like, there's apprenticeships. You work under somebody for 4 years, but who has that many years to be able to make money? Who has that many years? Like it's easy starting in your teen years into your 20s. It's easy to do that because during that time you can build up a savings. But then at the same time, we're talking about older people transitioning into something different. Middle career people that had jobs and had to transition, and this is where the media just kind of like, okay, um, if you're a middle career person, then you have to go into a trade. At a certain age, what does that do to your body? Your body is in the shape that it needs to be in order to be in that field because you were so preconditioned to be in a sedentary environment. So those that are switching over from mid-career office type environments into being outside and being in the field and getting your hands dirty, that's a hard transition for somebody that's 45 or 56 years old who's been working in the office environment for years. And this is what the media kind of really skips out on. Talking about when it comes to talking about the trades, there's always these myths around trades, and you have people like Mike Rowe is pushing trades and pushing this whole thing, but transitioning over to trades is not an easy task, especially when it comes to construction trades, because then the body has to be conditioned to be outside. And you have older people that have never done construction trades before going mid career, finding themselves laid off, and now they have to get a hammer and a tool belt in order to fix things. That's not a punishment I will wish on anybody, period. And like I said, the trades are good, but the trades are also dangerous. And then you're fighting for pay, and then you're fighting for back pay, and then you're fighting for hazard pay. Because if you get injured on that job and that construction company doesn't want to pay your workers' comp, then you're just shit out of luck. Most of these companies that people work for, whether it be bricklaying or welding or, you know, being an iron worker, those types of jobs, somebody get injured on a job, they try to find ways to put the claim of accidents back on to the individual instead of the company that tried to cut corners to try and get a building project done. And like I said before, when it comes to construction trades, most of these companies that people work for don't have unions, so they don't have those employee protections. If companies wanted to get cheap labor and hire cheap labor, they would do that just to avoid paying legitimate unionized construction workers. And this is where the bullshit starts to go off the rails when it comes to trades. Because when teachers were talking and bringing up the trades, they didn't talk about the consequences. Yet they're not in a trade, they're in a profession. They're a teacher, right? So why would a teacher tell a student they ought to go into the trades but not tell them what the consequences could be if they get hurt or if they get injured on the job? They don't talk about those things or what it could do to the body over time, or the fact that you're breathing in all this chemical dust, chemical waste, stepping in all types of liquid chemicals that could destroy you, that could make you sterile and infertile. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about those things. They don't talk about the possibility of falling from 3 stories and being paralyzed. They don't talk about how you could get injured and fall on some rebar that some rebar could impale you. They don't talk about those things. They don't talk about those injuries. You know, they just gloss over that shit and say, "Well, you ought to go into a trade," but yet nobody should have to pay $27,000 to $30,000 to go to a trade school when those same careers could be taught in a classroom. But see, what the United States has done was they decided to focus on white collar work, office work, teaching young students to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, like they sit at a cubicle in a big building. And that has been the method and the process in which our educational system has been built around. Because when deindustrialization came in the 70s, all those jobs were gone, all those jobs were wiped out. And now we're fighting to get that balance back into the educational system, where, on one hand, if that student wants to go to college, they should be able to go to college. But if trades are the thing that they need, they can come out of high school with a trade and be able to do what is needed to hit the ground running and actually start working right when they get out of high school. But we don't have a system like that because we had politicians year after year say, going to college was important, getting a 4 year degree was important, that if you had a 4 year degree, that you would make $1 million more than somebody without a degree or a high school diploma. They kept saying it and kept shouting it at the rooftops. And now we're facing this crossroads where AI has now taken all of those jobs that we were training so hard for in school and then in college. And now they're saying that now entry level workers are no longer needed. It's the greatest criminal thing that has happened to American society in the last 15 years. And you could blame the politicians for continuing to allow this shit to happen. And this is why we are where we are right now. So then the next time we talk about pushing all these kids into the trades, make sure for the teachers, please make sure you tell them the opposite side of what could happen if you're in those fields. Don't tell them, well, based on your grades, you're not going to make it in college, so you ought to take a trade and then push them and shove them into trades and not tell them what the major consequences is if you continue down the road of going into construction trades. And that's what I feel like right now we're dealing with. Trades aren't the glory that everybody's thinking it is. Do not let the media tell you and tell your kids that the trades are the golden ticket to the middle class, because it ain't. It's just another pathway with a career choice with no pathway to financial freedom. Tell me what you think. Leave a comment in the comment box. What do you think about the trades? I know somebody out there that's going to say, well, trades are the best thing that ever happened to me. I make more than a lawyer. At the price of what? Your back and your knees? This has been another Media Talks TV with your host, Tony J. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Make sure you hit the like, comment, share, subscribe. We'll be right back with some more videos. I'm Tony J, and I'm out. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.